Welcome to the Good Growing Podcast. I am Chris Enroth, horticulture educator with University of Illinois Extension, coming at you from Macomb, Illinois, and we have got a garden bite for you today. Today, we are going to talk about water. It is dry out there. It's been dry for a couple of weeks, and it might be dry for another week or two. And if you have ever searched for how much water to give your plants, you've probably read that the usual recommendation is that plants should receive about 1 inch to 1.5 inches of water every single week. And right now in central Illinois, we haven't had rain for almost a month. Now, as we finish up our first week of June and still no rain in sight for many of us, we are tired of dragging that hose around, and it is not even officially summer yet. So in conversation with my mother just a couple of days ago, she mentioned that she has to train people how to water when they show up to help at their public garden that she works at the Illinois Veterans Home. And I have had similar observations of wacky watering techniques myself. So instead of talking about how much to water, let's cover how to water. Now, most homeowners' watering technique resembles what I see on TV or say in the movies. And when it comes to Hollywood, often the person doing the watering, they're the nosy neighbor or that upstanding homeowner with the perfect yard. Now, the culprits here are usually hosing down the top of their hedge, usually in the background of a scene. So how do they get such a great yard when they're watering their plants so wrong? Well, watering the leaves of a plant makes little sense. Plants don't absorb water, or very little at that. So water uptake is the job of the root system. Additionally, as you continually wet down a leaf surface, that often leads to foliar disease. So moral of the story here, do not water your garden like John or Jane Hollywood does on the big screen. Now, when watering trees, shrubs, perennials, or vegetables, direct the hose to the soil. Most of us gardeners, we will use a watering nozzle with different spray settings. Now, I prefer to use the shower setting as that gives you a broad yet gentle pattern. You don't want to blast your soil with a sharp stream of water, as that will lead to soil loss, erosion, and will actually splatter soil up onto your plant, which is actually another vector for disease. And hint, hint, mulch helps to reduce soil splash. So if that's a problem, consider mulching around your plants. So when watering, I've shown you where to direct the water, and perhaps now you're asking, well, how long does it take to water each plant? And as with most answers on this podcast, I would say it depends. Now, primarily the duration of watering depends on how fast your nozzle delivers water and then how fast your soil absorbs it. In college, we had professors, they had us calculate gallons per minute based on water pressure, the hose diameter, and the hose length. And that was all in the classroom as we were designing irrigation systems. And standing out in the garden with the hose in your hand, trying to work a calculator, checking friction loss coefficients, deciphering your shorthand, that stretches the chore of watering beyond cumbersome into absurd. Now, outside of the classroom, we have the benefit of in-field trial and error, also known as if it doesn't work, plants will die. So take your hose and a timer. Water the soil on one side of your plant for 30 seconds. Stop your timer, go to the other side of the plant, and restart your timer again and water that side for 1 minute. Dig through the mulch on both test sites using a trowel or something like that. Is the soil wet underneath? Did the water penetrate down farther than just the mulch and reach the surface of the soil? If with that hand trowel, or better yet, your index finger, probe that ground, how far down did the water get? If you can feel moisture under the soil surface, you are likely applying enough water. Now, established plantings should be irrigated to a soil depth of 6 to 8 inches. Now, that equates to 1 inch of rainfall or irrigation per week. Clay soils or sandy soils, weather, mulch, how dense your plants are, and so on, all influence the soil moisture levels and the demand for irrigation. Now, if you want a little hint about how you can probe the depths of your soil, maybe without having to excavate a bunch of dirt, use a long screwdriver and drive that into the soil. The deeper it goes, that means that moisture is getting down there. Wherever it stops, that's usually where that moisture has stopped. Unless you have sandy soil or a lot of organic matter, then that screwdriver might go down a little bit deeper than that water goes. So after experimenting with the timer, you might find out that you have to stand at each plant for 2 minutes and sometimes even longer. Now, if you're like me and you do not have the patience to hover over plants with a hose for an hour, consider drip irrigation. Now, my vegetable garden is watered via drip irrigation, and it is on an automated timer system. In the past, drip irrigation was kind of a foreboding term, but not anymore. Most garden centers, they now sell drip irrigation system kits, and they have all the parts and pieces you need, including the instructions to put together a functional irrigation system. If you can hook a garden hose up to a spigot, you can install a drip irrigation system. I've often said it's like Legos, but for grown-ups. So one last question comes to mind. What about trees and shrubs? So in my yard, the trees and shrubs, they get watered with a hose set to a slow drip and placed near the base of the plant for about an hour or two. And I move that hose around about every 20 minutes. Now, if you don't have a hose that could reach, say, the shrub or tree that you're looking at, a 5-gallon bucket with holes drilled in the bottom has the same effect. It's essentially drip irrigation. Hopefully this clears up the question of how to water your landscape and garden plants. If you have further questions about watering or irrigation, please feel free to contact your local Illinois Extension office. Now, do I spy rain in the forecast? Nope, never mind. That's just a dust cloud. So looks like it's time to turn that spigot back on. Well, that was a lot of great information about watering or how to water in the yard and garden. The Good Growing Podcast is a production of University of Illinois Extension and edited this week by me, Chris Enroth. And stay tuned for next week. Ken Johnson will be right back with another Garden Bite for the Good Growing Podcast. Well, listeners, thank you for doing what you do best, and that is listening or watching us on YouTube, and as always, keep on growing.